the music video. So I think we're playing that at the end.
Oh, that's exciting. Okay, let's give it like until 8:02 and then we'll start our introductions.
Hey, Rue, I like how the airflow going in and out of the
I know.
the awake eyes.
The virtual background was not made for all of us equally, I've learned in these Zoom times.
Like color film or anything.
But you know, it's confusing to me because they've had 7 months to figure that one out. But you know, I kind of like it. I like it too. Okay, it's 8:02 and we have 20 people. So let's get started and hopefully others will join us. Thank you, all of you, for joining us, for doing this incredible program. Thank you for Freedoms. My name is Rujeko Hockley and I'm going to moderate this conversation between these four incredible people. And we've been brought together by Kat's film, Aggie, which is about her incredible mother, Agnes Gund, known as Aggie. So I'm going to ask each of the four of you to introduce yourselves in the way that you like to introduce yourself in, 1 minute or less. I'll start with Kat. And I'm recording.
Thank you for moderating this, Rue, and for bringing us together and for all of the incredible work For Freedoms is doing, especially today and last week and the next week around the vote. And, everyone knows we got to get out there and vote in great numbers. And so I'm Catherine and I made the movie and I have worked with Tanya for many, many years as a producing partner in several of my films. And I'm lucky enough to know and have become friends with Craig and Jesse. And this is Jesse's quilt right behind me here. And I love Rue, and I'm glad we're all here together tonight, and I think we should have a great conversation.
Excellent. Tanya, why don't you go next?
So I am just happy to be here.
Tell us who you are as well, though.
Oh, I'm Tanya Selvaratnam. I am a producer with Catherine of Aggie, and also a member of the For Freedoms family and the Rue Hank Zenzi supermodel family. And so delighted to be in conversation with Russell and Jesse, whom I admire so much.
All right, thank you. Jesse, you can go next. I'm going in order of my screen.
So hi everyone, I'm Jesse Crimes. I'm an artist and sometimes curator on the side. I'm just really excited to be here and be in conversation with everyone, and look forward to the talk.
Last but not least,
Craig.
Hello everyone, my name is Russell Craig from Philadelphia. I'm an artist. It's an absolute honor and privilege and pleasure to be here. For Freedoms, that's my family. Art for Justice, and it's just great to be here.
Excellent. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I just rewatched Aggie with Zenzi, my daughter. Kat got some photos from that. And it was amazing to see it the first time I saw it. This is probably my third and a half time. And what really struck me in seeing it this time was thinking about I had so many, the first time I was like, oh, the people I know, oh, the artists, oh, like museums. And this time I was really struck by all the things that Art for Justice is doing that are kind of outside of actually the museums and the artists, though of course the artists and the museums are really important, but all the ways in which it's kind of filtering out into the actual criminal justice and prison kind of abolition reform space. So my first question, I think, is about one of the things I was struck by is that in 5 years, you want to give away all your money. And I was really curious, that really struck me. So Kat, could you talk a little bit about that part of it? And then we can kind of segue a little bit, but I really so curious about that.
Well, that's wonderful. And nobody really takes that out of the movie. I think that, when I made the movie, it was about Art for Justice and saying I wanted other people to recognize this incredible sweet spot of artists and activists who are one and the same and who are united and working together, but also identifying and also, aligned donors, like sort of art that we all, and in COVID, I think we recognize more than ever that mutual aid has brought out the philanthropist in everyone. And so we are all an activists and involved in mutual aid and philanthropists. So, but it's interesting because I realized to tell the story of Art for Justice, I needed to talk about art and museums and the stuff you're talking about, because that is where this person came from who had this intention behind the sale. And yet the work of reparations, which is what I believe a 5-year spend down of this amount of money really is surprising. So that's why I started with Art for Justice, but I have to kind of weave the biography back. Like, how do we develop our own subjectivity? What are our values compared to other people who may share space or family or be our siblings or whatever? And so the 5-year spend down, the idea behind that is, one, to end mass incarceration, not to create an endowment that fights to end mass incarceration in perpetuity. We want to end it. And then the other point was that at this stage, with over 2 million people incarcerated in prisons and jails and over 4 million under supervision of parole and probation, that there are so many formerly incarcerated leaders and visionaries who are finally on the outside, who are now getting some kind of platform and recognition that I think Aggie really recognized. That this she didn't start this movement. She never claimed that. She knew she was jumping into a moving river. It wasn't getting that it is getting now. And I think because it was sort of this bipartisan issue and there was this leadership of formerly incarcerated people, and because she saw that the artists were the leaders who needed resources, that she just thought, if we just get the money out into the field, people will know what to do with it. She said, I don't know what to do with it, but Craig and Jesse and Mahogany and Adnan and Desmond Meade and Norris Henderson, and I mean, I can go on and on and on about the Art for Justice family, but there are people to do with that money. So she wanted to get it out there. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's one of the components that I think more philanthropists should look at, which is how not to hoard control over the resources and actually to put them back into the community with the people who know what to do with them.
Absolutely. So Craig and Jesse, I'm curious from your perspectives individually, first of all, how did you kind of first come into the Art for Justice family, into the broader Gund family? This is my first question for both of you. And then kind of piggybacking on what Kat was saying, as far as what the kind of impact is, I'm curious about, what has the impact been, and what's your kind of perspective on the things that Kat said, just in terms of the timing and how we can reform philanthropy as well as prisons. And Tanya, that's a question for you too. So just next. Whoever would like to go first, please jump in.
Jesse can go first.
You want me to go? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I was gonna pick you, Craig, but Jesse, you picked Jesse, and I said you could pick. So
he'd be ready to go. He'd be ready to go.
Not always. No, but I think when we first, we first met Aggie. She came, her and Kat and Helena and Tanya, all came to Philly to meet us, which was, insane to even think about it at the time. Just knowing who Aggie is and Kat and the whole A4J crew, to think that they would come the whole way to Philadelphia and like have a studio visit with us, come see the work, like really just like take the time to learn who we are, learn what our work is about. And so that's how we got connected. And then after that, they invited us to apply for individual grants and do massive projects. And honestly, it was so transformative in so many different ways. One being like coming from prison, like me and Craig were already connected, right? Like we were friends. We clicked really, really quickly. And that's true of like a lot of other like formerly incarcerated artists and other people that we would kind of come across. But I mean, honestly, like a lot of people didn't really mess with us. Like we were kind of, you know, not really taken serious as artists or given the same types of like opportunities or platforms that a lot of other artists were getting. And so, you know, I think meeting Kat and Aggie and getting connected to A4J, it like opened up so many doors, which is also like the complete inverse of what prison is all about and like what that does to the community of like putting up so many barriers and obstacles. And so, you know, I think just the ability to connect with people who are that genuine and like that concerned with ending mass incarceration and willing to support you in the work that you think is important and necessary in order to accomplish that. I mean, it was just transformative in so many different ways.
What year was that you first all met?
What was that?
Maybe
it was like 2000.
2017 or 2018 at the latest.
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great. So it's been a few years. And what about for you, Craig? What do you think?
Like I could remember it a little bit further back than where Jesse started from. I think it all started from when we was out California at a harness retreat, and we met Helena and Tanya Cope, Helena Hung and Tanya Cope from the Ford Foundation. And then eventually we like sometimes we didn't know it was going to come. We got like the opportunity to apply for the grant. So once we got the grant, Art for Justice, and then and it's just probably not verbatim, but it's like something like this. So we got the grant. So me and Jesse, we was working on a project, Portraits of Justice, downtown Philadelphia. We like really close to the area too. So Agnes had invited us to the house, and we was like, oh no, we can't come to the house because like we gotta finish this project because like it was funded by Art for Justice. So then when she came, she decided to come bring the Gun family, the Ford Foundation. This is like first like really meeting everybody. So it was crazy. So the way I seen it, it was kind of like Coming to America when Joffrey Joe came through. That's how it was. It was like it was real serious because we was like, oh, she coming to see us. So it was like mind blowing. It was mind blowing, and it really transformed everything. We was like struggling. Art was gonna always be a part of our lives, no matter what. Like we could just be bummed artists on the street or whatever. Like we're gonna always try to make some art, but like Agnes coming through, that was crazy, and just bringing her whole circle, and then it like brought us in as like family. So not just like we got grants and things like opportunities, is like they provided like a family personally, in which I never had. So words is giving y'all some kind of idea, but you can never like really dig. It's like it's just mind blowing all the time, and I don't think I'll ever get used to it.
Well, I mean, Aggie's amazing, and Art for Justice. I mean, I still am like, it's still mind blowing to me how Art for Justice came to be, and it shouldn't be, which is this kind of thing about philanthropy and about the art market, and I guess it's a thing about capitalism also. But I agree, it's like fully forever. A little bit about that. Fully forever incredible. Tanya,
I quote it of you in the movie saying it's so obvious, like it's amazing, but it's obvious. And I tell that to people all the time. I'm like, it shouldn't be this unique. But I know you're going to ask Tanya something, but quickly just about Russell and Jesse is that you know, people meeting and coming together, which is a big part of the movie, where we have conversations, Aggie has conversations with people. But that when Craig and Jesse came with us to Los Angeles, we went out to the amazing artist Mark Bradford's studio, showed us around it's like an airport hangar. So
the compound?
The compound. So we were walking around the compound, and he got to meet Craig and Jesse and talk to them. And he didn't know with us because, as Craig said, it's always just family. It's like family, however we define that. So they were doing some, MoMA trustees and whatnot, but we had Aggie and me and Helena and Tanya Koch and these guys, and there we were. And they started talking to him and he was blown away. He had no idea that he was in the presence of these brilliant artists who were, really clear about what their story was and what their purpose was. And Mark Bradford became the very first artist to contribute to the Art for Justice Fund because, Aggie would never impose on an artist in that way. So she's never asked an artist to contribute. And Mark Bradford was so blown away by his relationships and his conversation with Craig and Jesse that he created the police camera print, and he sold an entire edition of 40 prints to benefit Art for Justice, and he raised $1 million for Art for Justice. And Hauser and Wirth contributed all the fees and charged no whatever the charges.
Whatever those other charges are. It's amazing.
Credit that entire circle, and it's what and Tanya I'm sure can talk about this because even in the making of the movie that it's connecting dots all the time. It's intersections, but it's connections, and the fact that these guys connected through me and Aggie to Mark Bradford. Mark connected back, and now there's Julie Meritu and Mark DeSuvero and Jeff Koons and even some of our artist fellows. Titus Kaphar and Dwayne Betts have contributed a piece, and a lot of artists are now, but because it's a community, it's a family everyone wants to be a part of, and it's a movement everyone wants to be a part of.
I would say it's a family that everyone already is a part of, which is kind of the beauty of it. I really miss your dinners, Kat, for that reason. We'll come back to that. Tanya, yeah, so just can you share some of your thoughts? And I also would love to hear, Tanya, this is my Luddite question. Tell me what you do as a producer.
Well, in my 25 years of being a producer, I still haven't figured out how to answer that question adequately. But I will say that with this film, because Kat and I have a longstanding partnership spanning 13 years now and multiple films, each film is different. But the genesis of this film is especially beautiful and unique, which is that it didn't start out as a film. It started out purely as Kat wanting to capture Agnes in conversation with the people who are important in her life, her friends, her family, the artists. And after each shoot, I would say to her, I think we're making a movie. And then after many, many, many shoots, it became very clear, and not clear just because of the material we were capturing, but also because of the impact that this could have on consciousness in general. And also the impact that film has on transforming consciousness. There's a very important pivot in the film, which is that Aggie was inspired to create the Art for Justice Fund after seeing Ava DuVernay's 13th. And the next day, after having a convulsive reaction, reached out to Darren Walker and hatched the plans to start the Art for Justice Fund. And there's this beautiful line that Ava DuVernay says in the film that frames the whole documentary, which is that art requires imagination and justice does as well. And it speaks very much to what I feel is the gift that Aggie gives all of us, which is that everyone should experience art and everyone can be an artist. And her destigmatizing of everyone so that anyone can enjoy that, her throwing down her glove to say this is a problem we need to solve, which is something that tracks throughout her entire history, with starting studio in a school, for example, just making sure that art was accessible to all, recognizing that arts education funding was being cut. And I think she's a real example that's especially important in these times where we all need to throw down our gloves and contribute in whatever way we can. So that's what I would say about the genesis of the film, and also why I feel it's so important that this film come out now.
Absolutely. The timing, I mean, is incredible in so many ways. Obviously, we could never have predicted any of what we are in, although actually some of it maybe we could have. As kind of our two official artists, Craig and Jesse, I'll start with you, Craig. Can you tell us, like, when did you first start to think of yourself as an artist? And were you like, is art making something you did as a child? Like, I'm always very curious in like the origin story of people's self-identification as an artist, as well as like kind of when you started to feel this like creative impulse, whether you called yourself an artist or not.
Oh, well, my art journey started like very young. I was probably about 7 years old. So I have two older sisters, and we were in the foster home. And one of my sisters, she had painted a picture of a horse and drew a picture of the Simpsons. And then she got like all this attention from our foster parents, which didn't happen all the time. So that was like something new. And then also like she introduced me like to the art. So I tried to mimic it and things like that to get that attention, and also to try that skill, in which like art, that was when art was first introduced to me. So I didn't get the same reaction because I tried to mimic the same thing she did. And they like, nope, already seen it. Nope. You know what I mean? So I just kept it with me because it was like something to do. Ain't had much toys. Christmas and all that would come around. We ain't get nothing. So I would draw because that was like a way of like, I'll just be in my own world. And then once I wound up like in prison, like fast forward, like I was like reconnected with the art in the same way. It was like nothing there for you except for like art, and you could just get lost in it. So it started way back then, like 7. And then I was like drawn out of the Jet magazine, like try to do portraits of LL Cool J and things like that. I remember that. I remember the start. And then the beauty of the week, because I like ladies. So I would try, because girls would ask me in the class, can you draw me? And I was like nowhere near there. So I try to like practice the woman's face and figure and things like that. So I got a kind of art at it.
That's amazing. And when did you start to call yourself an artist to yourself or to other people?
I think back then, because then once I started getting into it, and then I would go to class and we would start having like drawing contests with the other artists. So it was certain things that I drew so much. Then I started getting heavy into the comic books, like all the Marvel movies. Jesse, I'd be hitting it with these analogies. He'd be like, "You gotta put it in a work," but it all come from like I've been really like, I wouldn't say steady, but familiar with like Marvel and DC comics for a long time, and then like also a way how you could learn like anatomy and things like that, facial structures and expressions and things and the characters and stuff. So, and then I would get into drawing contests, Ninja Turtles and all that old stuff in school. So, and they would call me artist Picasso. That was the name. They would Black Picasso, like since I was a kid. So,
oh, that's amazing.
Where I was never that good, but they was like, that's the artist they knew, so they would put that name.
That's subjective. You were that good. You are that good.
I appreciate that.
I love that. Very cool. And what about you, Jesse? What's your path to becoming an artist?
Yeah, I mean, I think mine's somewhat similar to Craig's in that, I mean, I've been making art ever since I was young, ever since I can remember. I don't think I really knew what it was to be an artist. So like, I'm an only child, and my father was never there. And then like, it was just a way for me. The environment that I grew up in was like something that I tried to disconnect from. And art was always a thing that kind of allowed me to create and like have my own space, particularly being an only child. Although I had never had a conception of what an artist is, or like even knew that there was a possibility that you could be an artist. And so it's just something I always kind of did on the side. And then, I think it really started to begin to click for me like around the time when, my father ended up, my stepfather ended up committing suicide. And so like trying to work through some of those things, like art was the one thing that provided like a safe space for me and like a mental space for me to kind of like work through just some everyday kind of things. And then again, like, you know, I always focused on art. I went to school and chose to study art, but I was like, I should just be a graphic designer because there's no other way to make a living as an artist. And ended up hating that and getting arrested, going to prison, lost all of my scholarships, came home, went back to school, violated probation and parole, went back to prison, came home, went back to school, finally graduated. And after I graduated, I got indicted by the government. And, you know, I was looking at like a mandatory minimum of 10 years to life. They had me in solitary confinement. And so I was like thinking back, like it immediately clicked to me that I needed to make artwork. Like art was going to be the only thing that kind of got me through that situation. And that was the moment when I realized that I am an artist, because it was the moment in my life where everything was taken from me, like taken away from family, taken away from everything I've been trying to build and work towards. But the one thing that the prison system couldn't take or destroy was my ability to create. And so that was the moment it solidified. And that's also the moment when I started just producing as much artwork as possible. I mean, working like 13, 14 hours a day, reading everything I possibly could on art. Yeah, but I would say prison is the thing that kind of catalyzed the I am an artist. But I had no idea that I could ever have like, I still had no idea what it meant to like be an artist or be a professional artist, or that that could even happen. It was just something I knew that this is what I'm going to do no matter what.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that kind of common thread in both of what you've said is kind of connecting back to what Tanya said that the film does and what Aggie has done is this kind of art is not only something that is within everyone and everyone has the capacity to be a creative person and an artist, but it also serves a really particular purpose and like this connection to our interior space, our kind of interiority that maybe can become a protected space even under the most painful extreme of circumstances, which I would say incarceration and certainly especially solitary confinement would be, and also kind of just the ways in which we are not treated the way we should be by adults in our lives, potentially as children, like the kind of refuge that is potentially the self. That's really amazing. I wanted to think about also kind of where we all are and how we all are in this kind of very intense moment in the lead up to, you know, a very, very important election, let's just call it. So where are each of you and how are each of you? Let's start with you, Catherine.
Don't keep starting with me.
We can stop. I'll go first. I'm sorry, listen.
First, you go first.
Moderators always get to just ask the questions and like dip. I am in Brooklyn, New York. And I have been very distracted all day. Even more than usual in this very kind of distractible time, I think, that we're living through. And I think I woke up feeling very, I would say, not positive and not optimistic about the future based on the kind of the Supreme Court confirmation. It was really not a surprise, but still very demoralizing, let's call it. That's like the best case scenario word I can use. But I actually am feeling a lot better for some reason. I think you all maybe are a part of it, and watching Aggie again and kind of thinking about all the ways in which we can transform the world, whether through art or through justice. I love that quote about art and justice both requiring imagination. So yeah, I think I'm naturally optimistic, which is I feel lucky to be naturally optimistic, but it's hard to remain that way these days. So I'm trying to get back there so that tomorrow we can keep going. So now I will go. You can go second, Kat.
Okay. I'll go second, but I love the question, Rue. Where are you? because I feel like we have to answer that for ourselves every single day right now, to pull ourselves into a place where we can carry on. And I want to especially shout out gratitude to Craig and Jesse for sharing their stories about having to spend time in prison and how that's affected them. Because for many of us, that isn't a part of our story. And I think what you started with, what did you say? I wrote it down somewhere, but it was something about, oh, it was Jesse, it was you. You said that art for justice to you felt like opening doors, and that's the opposite of being in prison. And I think there's all these ways that what's come clear during COVID, and then certainly during the uprising for liberation, that we're both revealing and also exacerbating the problems. And so I feel like when we look at the prison system right now, it is the epicenter of the COVID crisis. It is everything that we knew was wrong, and it's getting worse. But it's also clear, I think, so crystal clear right now, if people are willing to look at what's happening. And I think that's part of why, you know, in the early days, people are like, how are you going to pivot? What are you going to do in these moments to respond to the times? And both Art for Justice and consequently the Aggie film didn't have to pivot at all. They just had to work harder. And so that's where I'm in New York too, lucky to be near you, Rue. And even though we don't get to see each other, it is painful to, you know, to ask, where are you when you can be very close. Actually, I have gotten to see Craig a couple times, so that's good. But I just feel like this work that I feel like I can hold both hope and grief in the same place, which I didn't know I could do before. To really be able to say this assignment of this insane cult woman to the Supreme Court is terrifying and destructive and painful. And yet at the same time, I know that we have to hold on to the hope that something's going to change and we're going to get through this. That's where I'm at.
Absolutely. Tanya, where are you? And while you tell us that, can you also tell us where else you have been in the last 6 months and give us some perspective on those two places?
Well, I am on the Lower East Side of New York right now. I spent the last 5 months in Portland, Oregon. So I have gone from one anarchic jurisdiction to another. I left New York City in the spring when things were especially tense here with regard to the coronavirus. And because the situation was calmer in Portland at that time, I thought that it would be just a better place to be. But I could not have anticipated how Portland would explode in so many ways. And after the protests and the standoff with the federal agents and just witnessing what this country could devolve into, it really kind of made me double down my commitment to do everything that I could to support the election and voter turnout. And it was when the wildfires were happening in Oregon and we had the worst air quality in the world that I decided to come back to New York. And I'm just so glad to be, if not face to face with, close by, where so many people I love and so many of the artists that I love are. Just to know that we're all in the same city is very comforting to me. And I really feel like it's, you know, day by day. It's like what Chris Rock said on Saturday Night Live a couple of weeks ago: who makes plans anymore? And nothing is surprising me that's coming out of the federal government. So, but I think part of why nothing surprises me is I just always think of like some of my North Stars. I think of Flo Kennedy. I think of James Baldwin. I think of what Flo Kennedy said, which is don't agonize, organize. I think of what James Baldwin said, which is the precise role of the artist is to make the world a more human dwelling place. And I feel like we could not have foreseen that in our lifetimes we would be experiencing this time of total upheaval. I mean, where we were in January, February, and where we are now is mind-blowing, mind-blowing. And I kind of am curious about where we're going to be after we get through this. But I think that this is where I feel like artists are going to be so crucial in helping shape the direction that we need to go in. So that's where I am.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tanya. That's very inspiring. Where are you, Craig, and how are you?
Oh, well, right now, and that's interesting question again, because like today was crazy. I flew from Ohio to Philadelphia. Then I went to New York because I realized I packed too light for my stay at Philly because I'm going to be here for some days. Went to New York, grabbed some stuff, and now I'm back in Philadelphia. But I live in Brooklyn. So
What
that's
are
where
you
I'm at.
doing? What are you doing in Philadelphia?
Oh, we having a dedication tomorrow for a mural that that's on the African American Museum, and also we have a rendering justice show at the African American Museum, in which Jesse has curated, working with Mural Arts of Philadelphia.
And what were you doing in Ohio?
Me and Tyra Patterson, we had put the mural together, and I was a part of the design team, in which I kind of gave them direction, but the design changed a lot of times. They had some young people. It was really young, like 16, things like that, like very young. I was impressed with the young artists who they had to execute the piece. But that mural was touching on women incarcerated and reentry and things like that. It was like it was special. So it was good to be able to assist them, because I have some experience working with mural arts for like 7 years now. So
Yeah.
Cincinnati kind of new to the mural system. So I lent some of my know-how to them, and it was good to see it come together, especially like with COVID and everything going on, and to see like something get completed. Always like that. So I always like to keep it moving. But if we want to move into like how am I like in my soul, you know what I mean? Like things is like stressful. So we be having like a lot of stuff that's going on pretty good for us, that I'm like so thankful for. But it's hard. It'd be days like when we would just have like good things happen, but I'd be like stressed because I like how y'all got like the eyes, like the wide awake, because it's like that's how I was really feeling it. I said, oh yeah, because see I got the eye on my watch.
Oh,
It's like a
wow.
reminder.
I see it.
I always got that though. But it's like, because I see things like, I won't get too deep, but I
You
don't
can
be
get too deep.
surprised by things like it. It's like Jesse Crowns know that I made some predictions about how dark things are like a while ago, right? And then it's like, so when it get crazy, it just be like a part of me be like, and I think it come from being like captured, like, in a prison system, and not just that, this whole oppression that I remember from when I was a very young kid, back when I was first started out doing art and things like that, around that age, like 5, 7, and I would watch on TV where white supremacy and they would like the Martin Luther King marches and stuff, and they'd be hosing black people and sicking the dogs on them and all that stuff. So in Pennsylvania, I was shipped from Pennsylvania to Virginia because they had a private prison in which they didn't have the bodies to fill it. So they sold us in a modern day slave trade, in which people, because I had family and stuff like that, so you got courted in that. I'm saying all that to say, of like that kind of experiences make me not surprised about the things that goes on, that's happening right now. There's a lot of people, because they was in a place where this is really hectic, and then they slapped the pandemic on there too, and you couldn't go outside and all that like you wanted to. It got real crazy. So, and I've been in captivity, so it's like I see this stuff, so it be having me stressful, because I don't, when a new thing happened, when it's something else, they'd be like, oh my God, could you believe it? And I'd be like, we're like, that's how they get down, And then as an artist, we have to like make work about the times, but then try to like usher in some change or be a part of change. And it's getting difficult lately, you know, because it's like it's not as never was easy, but it was like it's getting real difficult. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I'm at.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that, yeah, you went deep, and I feel like we're all better for it.
No, I kept it. I
You
kept
you
it.
you went like, if this is like deep, you were like, you know,
Yeah. That was kind of chill.
shallow deep.
Word, I gave a
But
little
no, I
something.
mean, I think that what you said is really important. That there, it's like the perspective and the context of both. Like for some people, based on their life experience, it's like, well, of course, this is what's happening. Why would it be any different? And the kind of connection to the kind of deep history of this country and of this world. That it's not about like, you know, you don't have hope for the future, but it's about like reality. Jesse, how are you? And where are you?
I mean, honestly, I'm exhausted. So I'm in Philly, and like Craig said, you know, I curated a show at the African American Museum here, and that opens tomorrow. It's called Rendering Justice. And the show is, you know, it features all of the artists are people who have been incarcerated or are directly impacted in some way. So I've just been, you know, kind of working my ass off, making sure that that is going to launch and everything is kind of lined up because of COVID and delays and everything that's happened. And so, yeah, I've been trying to make sure that runs smoothly, but also like trying to prepare for an exhibition that I agreed to do months and months and months ago. And now it's like here. And so I'm trying to make a new body of work. But I think, I mean, even with all of it though, and I think like Craig touched on it really powerfully, is that, you know, even the work that I'm making for my show, it's like work that I'm collaborating with people who are currently incarcerated. And it's just like, I don't know, the pressure of the moment of COVID, knowing that like prisons are just being run rampant with COVID, where people aren't given, I mean, you can't socially distance. There's all sorts of things that are happening within the prison system. And like people that I actually really love and care about are still in there fighting for their chance to come home. And so it's like just the pressures of trying to survive and live life out here, but also like being concerned about people who are still in there and trying to figure out ways to bring more attention to them and to get people to come home. I don't know, it's just stressful. And then I think like, you know, trying to work through everything else that's happening in the country. And, you know, again, kind of like what Craig said, it's like, when you've been in prison, like prison is like a microcosm of society in a way, but it's like almost as if, it's almost as if you live in like a totalitarian state, but it's like all of the ramifications or like white supremacy and all of the things that are occurring, that have been occurring forever here in society. They're just so amplified in prison. And so like, I mean, even with the protests and everything that you see happening, you see the techniques of how they try to like divide people, how they attack people, how they try to segregate people from creating community, from actually coming together, because they're terrified of what happens if we actually come together, if we actually form community and mutual support, because then you actually rise up against the people who are actually oppressing you. And so it's like, I don't know, to see it play out in like just such blatant ways and trying to like work through some of those things, and like also trying to get people out of prison and still go on with like day-to-day life is it's a bit difficult. And so that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, thank you so much to both of you for kind of your frankness and your openness. I think it is probably a lot difficult, not a little bit difficult. I would love to keep talking and keep hearing all of the things that you four have to say, but I want to be mindful also of the time, and that we are going to do a couple of questions, some which means we get to keep talking. So I'm going to read the first question that I see here in the Q&A box from Nora Halpern. Hi, Nora. Jesse and Craig, has your artwork and or your approach to your art making practices changed since Art for Justice came into your lives? Has your imagery changed at all over this period? Thank you for all you do. Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. Either of you can go for it?
I can go first this time because I'll be brief. It definitely changed because I think there's always room for improvement. So I'm always changing, but it's a specific kind of a change because before Art for Justice, I would like make art. It's still like that, like instinctively, but it would be like for myself, kind of like, you know, when I did the self-portrait that was on first seen at the Democratic National Convention in 2015. When I created that piece, it wasn't for like nobody. It was like strictly because that's how I felt. I was gonna throw my prison documents away and then decided to do something creative with it. Jesse gave me some advice that I should do because I did like a little version. He was like, you should do it again. You could do it better, you know? So I always appreciative of those kind of pushes. But with Art for Justice, it's like being connected to like the guns, the Ford Foundation, meeting Hank through like, you know, through this. And I met Hank. I had to tell him, I was a little groupie-ish because I was like, yo, when we was in prison, like you was the guy who we was like trying to be like, you know, like we looked to, you was like the study, like the go-to. And like, here you go right here. He was like, oh, like super chill with it. You know what I'm saying? So that
well, I
changed.
appreciate you thank you for telling me that. That makes me very proud. So
we had that talk. I had to slide that in there, and I didn't mean to make you feel uncomfortable, but that's the change I'm talking about. Like it's like another arena. So when it comes to that art, it's like I can't just go at a piece like I don't care. I got a certain kind of care because it's like people is looking at this work, and then it's like bigger than yourself. You know, you representing the people, and then that's what
absolutely.
I like to do anyway. Like that's my work, and then I'll be trying not to go too ham, so they won't be like, oh, he's just the angry black man. Then they make me the villain. I touch on one of the things that they doing. I'm talking about like white supremacy and all that stuff. And then they somehow, yeah, I mean, you know, he a criminal, and that's like what I was highlighting with my piece about the stigma of like being a criminal and being targeted in this system, no matter what, even when you change your life around. So it changed in a lot of ways because it's like it's so good to have like support, because when it gets stressful, because I'd have been stressed regardless, but like to have like Kat had invited me to a was it Thanksgiving? So that was like it'd be stuff like that, and it'd be like, so it ain't always stressful days. It's days where you invited and stuff like that, and you just gotta like make the balance, and that's why that piece that said MoMA PS1, I'm smiling, because it's like I remember Tupac said, you're gonna see some things that's gonna make it hard for you to smile. So I made sure I smiled in that portrait instead of having like a face that's frowning or too serious like I did before. I wanted to show like change and growth. So that all comes with the art. So I can kind of babble about that for a while. So I would just say, yes, it has changed, and it's always changing.
Yeah. It's like what Kat was saying about hope and grief. We can hold it both. Like you can be angry, but you can also have a smile because you're a complex person like all of us.
It's important, not to cut you off, but it's important
No,
it's important for balance. You know what I'm saying? It's important.
Absolutely. What about you, Jesse? Has your work changed since connecting with Art for Justice?
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the ways that, or one of the most beautiful things about like meeting Aggie and Kat and coming into the Art for Justice family was that, I mean, it radically shifted the possibilities of what we could even do just through support. And so, thinking about like making work as an individual artist and like just trying to scrape together, particularly coming home from prison and trying to like scrape together enough money to buy materials, like it just limits your ability to actually create in some sense. Though I say that, and I made Apocalyptine in a prison cell, which is like massive, but that also took like, 3 years of like 12-hour days. And so, you can make a lot with limited materials and resources, but the thing that shifted with having that support was like we could think much broader and like really dream up these massive projects and have the resources to bring this much fuller vision to life, which in my mind like has much greater opportunities for impact and community building and other ways to engage audiences that I don't know. Actually, I know that they just wouldn't have been possible without that. And so it definitely shifted, I think, just the scope and kind of breadth of like how I was thinking about approaching mass incarceration and some of these issues in my work.
Thank you. So I know you both told us a little bit about what you have going on right now, and I also want to shout out the incredible PS1 show that you mentioned, Craig, Art in the Age of Mass Incarceration, Marking Time, Art in the Age of Mass Incarceration. For whoever hasn't seen that, go see it. I wanted to ask in our last couple of minutes, if there's any questions out in the ether, please type them in the Q&A. Julian Lobb has a nice comment, and we had a mural art shout out. Hey, Darian. Wait, don't know how to make the questions go away. Sorry. Before we sign off, I just want to hear a little bit. Tanya and Kat, what are you all working on? And Craig and Jesse as well. Whatever we want to leave us with as far as what's coming up for you in the future. So Tanya, why don't you kick us off?
I am doing anything I can to turn out the vote and really focusing on this week ahead, because the record-shattering turnout has been giving me life. The record-shattering turnout amongst young voters, 18-29, has been giving me life. But I always say, day by day, like we can't let it up. So I'm really kind of like, again, who makes plans? We have no idea where we're going to wake up in next week or the week after. But for right now, I'm just focusing on this next week and doing whatever I can to turn out the vote.
Amazing. Thank you, Tanya. You're very inspiring in that capacity and in all capacities. What about you, Kat? What are you working on? Have cooking?
Will say, but I also hope that you will say too, Rue, because your ability to synthesize, but also to see things that not everybody is seeing is always inspiring to me. And so I'm really grateful to you for doing this tonight. But also I hope what I'm focused on right now, I think really is trying to visualize abolition in a way that doesn't freak everyone out, but actually goes to their core best self. And I think, you identified it, but there couldn't be, this film couldn't come out at a more opportune moment, because I feel like it is about saying, look at this world. It's the world we have here of the 5 of us and the people who are on this Zoom. Like there is a world that is peaceful and creative and just and not scary and not divisive and not starving people literally from food, but also in every other way in their lives. And the prison system is an emblem, exemplifies that, but it's throughout our whole culture and our society. And I think we share a vision of getting there. And what I'm focused on now is figuring out ways that each of us can actually help us see how to get there from here to there, instead of, it's easy for me to picture it. It's easy to picture it. It's really hard to see the part between here and there. I'm so grateful to all of you for being part of my journey to see how we're going to get there. But I believe we're going to get there, as Ava says. I believe we're going to get there.
You. And so I'll say what I'm doing so that y'all can have the last word here because we have a couple minutes left. I'm working on Julie Meritu's incredible exhibition that's going to come to the Whitney in March. Another artist who's in the documentary. My daughter today, while we were watching it, was kissing Julie, as she was also kissing Aggie on the screen. So, you know, she obviously has got good taste. Yeah, so it's really a joy to be working on that, especially in this kind of such a isolated and isolating time to kind of be, even though we're all on Zoom, but be connected again to Julie and to Christine Kim at LACMA. And we just did it just opened at the High in Atlanta, actually, if anybody is in Atlanta. Incredible 25-year survey of Julie Meritu's beautiful, important work, which will open at the Whitney in New York in March. So I'm working on that, and I'm trying to be like Tanya when I grow up and get the vote out and do some phone banking and stay wide awake at all times. You see the bandana, you see the background, you see the watch. Yeah, I'm really trying to, I think I'm really feel very lucky to be around artists and to really get to ride the coattails of artists and to really learn and see the world through kind of the lens of artists, including Hank, my husband, that you mentioned, Craig, but also all of you also. I feel very grateful. I'm very blessed to talk to you all tonight and just in general.
You are never riding anyone's coattails.
But if I was, it would be really fly. I saw Tanya this weekend. She was wearing like a really cool leather jacket.
Yes.
Really fly.
This was the beauty of New York, that we had like a totally spontaneous Saturday night, unplanned.
Even in COVID, it was
even
really
in COVID,
like
I mean,
amazing.
Park Slope was like Berlin.
The streets are closed off and the people are in the street, and so is the dining. Craig, when you get back to New York, we'll loop you in. We could do the Park Slope Saturday night with a toddler.
I'm with it.
It's very fun. So yeah, what I would love to hear from the two of you is our kind of final words on this program, on what you're working on in whatever way that resonates for you.
So who wants to go first? Me?
You go first. Jesse, go first this time. Last time.
All right. So I'm also working on a phase 2 of a mural that's downtown Philadelphia, entitled Crown, where I took images of protesters and put them in a crown formation, highlighting like COVID, coronavirus, and also the protests and things like that. So the blue sky represent like the police, in the hopes that like the good police do something about the bad. That's like what I was thinking. And I got the names of people that was murdered by police in the sky as well, to remember them. So I had to do that kind of quick because they needed it fast, because like the people were, protesting and just like upset, so it wasn't in its completion. So phase 2 is coming up soon, but then it became difficult, like I like to say, is the way I would describe, because like when I did the front part, like I could feel it. Like I'm like, I think people gonna like this. I could feel it. I was confident in it. But the most recent police killing in Philadelphia, it is alarming to us all, and they trying to justify it that he had a knife and things like that. But it's like the white guys with the knife, like you don't be shooting them. You could have tased them, things like that. So what I'm trying to get at is like to make this imagery to go on the sides, and what I intended to like, expand the feeling and giving the people something that they can look to and be like, that represents us. It's like now it's harder to do that now, because it's like they didn't put fuel on the fire again. So that's a task that I have, and I'm not throwing in the towel. I have to figure out a way how to make it that I feel good in doing it, and hopefully that it connects with the people. It's a task I had. And then also I had proposal art for justice, Dark Reflections. And quite a while ago, I was like, I want to highlight these situations that's happening. Breonna Taylor, like, the names go on it, George Floyd before it even happened, and try to do it in a way of like, not just like a portrait, a lot of artists that just do a portrait real quick, I wanted always to have more. So when I'm dealing with that, I can't just pump out a portrait like a Kurt Belt and just paint everybody that they killed. And it's like, and then it's like vicariously traumatizing, like revisiting and stuff. So it's like a juggling act. But Dark Reflections, I have been putting that together. So eventually one day it'll be like, this is what I present, you know what I'm saying, to represent that body of work. So those two things are coming.
I would say some of them are in the African American Museum in Philly, right?
Yes, I have begun.
Yeah.
Excellent. And Jesse, is there anything else? Where is your show opening that you're working on?
So yeah, the show I'm working on now opens at Malin Gallery in Chelsea.
Okay.
So that opens November 5th. I've already voted. I already got everyone in my family to vote. And for the first time in their lives, they've never voted.
That's amazing.
My grandmother's 78, and this is the first.
Amazing.
Yeah, they've had enough. People have had enough of this shit. So, and these are like, rural in the sticks, and they're just like, we can't take any more of this shit. Like, this is out of control. And so, my entire family who's never voted before is voting, which is amazing.
It's a beautiful thing.
That's crazy great.
Yeah. I mean, it's just before they were like, our votes never matter. It doesn't matter who's in office. It doesn't matter. We just live out in the middle of nowhere. No one listens to us. But they're just so sick of, everything that we're all sick of. So that's amazing. And then so I'm working on my show, which opens November 5th. And then I have this big crazy idea that I'm partnering with Art for Justice, and it's like a collaborative project where I'm working with Civil Rights Corps, and I'm trying to collectively make 2.2 million quilts, one for every single person who is currently incarcerated, and so that's like a much longer term thing that I'll probably die before I ever get to. But I'm hoping that, maybe we can get a lot of people into the process and start making them.
I mean, it's called a quilting bee or a sewing circle. We have a lot of models for how to do that collectively. So let's do it. Well, thank you so much, all of you. Let's see, I had Laura Wigan is asking how we can stay connected. I would say, however you found out about this program would be a great way to stay connected. For Freedoms, Aggie, Aubin Pictures, Jesse, Craig, everybody, myself, we're all on Instagram, and I think that this is how we connect in these times. This is how we communicate. So that would be my suggestion to you. So thank you all so much for coming. This was so beautiful and amazing. I really love talking to you all. It's really a pleasure for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Rue.
Thank
you, Craig and Jesse and Kat.
Thank you all. It's like creative connection in quarantine. And
wait, I'm gonna take a picture with my phone.
Good.
Okay.
Oh, that's a good idea.
We have to
Great. You all look beautiful. Thank you. I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Everyone was smiling. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Thank you. The music video. See, look.
Music video. One of our Art for Justice grantee partners, the brilliant and beautiful movement composer Samora Pinder-Hughes, made our theme song that goes over the credits of the movie, and this is the music video we made for it. So please stick around and listen and watch before we sign off.
Yeah, and Phoebe, just expand the screen for the player.
I think if we stop our videos, we'll disappear.
Yeah. Bye.
Da, da, production secrets.
Into the unknown, like wherever your note is, keep the notes. So we're gonna just do the same spot. Go full speed ahead. Okay, great. We figured it out.
What is the measure of a life? What is our place in this design? I dream of a day when the truth is told, and the sign of our worth is in the hearts we hold. Can we see a path forward in the ink of the pen and the time that we spend? I will fly into the unknown. I will find ways to be free. Just imagine with me. Just imagine, please imagine with me. Is everything all set in stone? So many of us feel alone. I dream of a day when the borders break and we see the change that we all can make. Can we find the deepest courage in the lives of our friends and the things we can mend? I will fly into the unknown. I will find ways to be free. Just imagine with me. Just imagine, please imagine with me. Just imagine, just imagine.